Hi, Tracy.
I'm on time today.
Hey.
Hey Tracy, did you see I started to do stuff with the document?
I have not had a chance to go back and look at it afterwards. You want to go ahead and bring it up and share it so we can, and I'll take notes.
Sure. Hey, give me a second here.
Absolutely. We got a few minutes. It's just 9:31 on my PC, so give folks a minute to come in.
Okay, so you can see that, yeah?
Yep.
Can you share a link to this doc as well? In the chat, thanks.
Bring up the doc so I can keep notes.
All right.
We're a quiet group today. All right. All righty.
All right.
Well, I'd say we go ahead and get started, and folks will probably show up. They'll just catch up.
Great. So I don't know, Tracy, if you want to talk about why we're starting up this document and how this came about, basically from NIST, and you want to go
Sure.
a little bit?
So if we go back to our original charter, you'll see in the charter that we want to build basically a tools catalog for in order to comply with different new standards. We listed the secure software development framework. We listed the NIST cybersecurity framework. We probably should have listed SALSA in there, but we didn't. But SALSA would be another one. So we stood up a website, as you all may or may not know. So yeah, Kate, can you bring up the website?
Yeah,
So what we have done so far, this team has been moving pretty quickly, pretty happy about that. So we've stood up a website and a way to share it, to document our work. And in the website, it is,
Yep.
I'll give you,
go ahead. Will you give it to me? Which,
yeah. Is, oops, let me do that.
version? So,
There is the website. So we are working on a Google Doc. We're trying Kate and I just put our heads together for about an hour last week trying to sort out how we could help pull these pieces together and present a documentation that's easy for us all to get involved in. So we started a shared doc.
sorry about this,
And-
guys. I'm sure I jumped on my computer. All right. I'm gonna go here.
Okay, so scroll down. So what we did was, if you know, and we probably can put this in the table format, but we just kind of got to start to see what it would look like. So wait, stop right there. Go back up. So here we have the section for how to achieve compliance based on the S2DF. And we looked through that and we pulled a couple of sections that really do apply to the execution of tasks across the DevOps pipeline. So this first one, PW 8.0, focuses, and it has several lower level bullet points like 8.1 through 8.7, I think, that focuses on test executable code to identify vulnerabilities and verify compliance with security requirements. And then we had the section, what you need to do. And then we pushed a section that said, here's the tools that can help you do it. And then there was an 8.2 that we looked at, scope the testing design, the test, perform the testing, and document the results. One of the tools that we believe would solve that would be megalinters. And then there's an RV section of it. That's funny. An RV section of it. Identify and confirm vulnerabilities on an ongoing basis. More than likely that's DAST. Actually, Ortelius would fit into this section. So the goal here would be to identify our first document as a team that we want to start going through is the Secure Software Development Framework. We have identified certain areas. We haven't finished it. Certainly there's quite a bit yet work to do. We've identified 2 areas within that the S2DF that we need to address, and that's the PW and the PV section. I think that one section should be PV, not RV. Maybe that's a typo. Could you bring up? Can you bring that document up, Kate? The software development framework. There should be a link to it right above there. So just go up. We have a link in the doc. So just click on that. Let's go over to that and you'll see how we structured it.
Thanks.
Oh, don't do that.
Yep.
You should be able to, yeah, there you go.
Right.
Okay, now scroll way down into where you get to the table section. And go to the sections that we were here's PO, keep going. Right there's PW. So we started with this section. PW 8.0 is what I believe we started with. There you go, right there. This is section in green is the section that we started with, and we didn't start it in an attempt to finish it. We started it with an attempt to come up with a process of documenting these pieces. So what we would like to do as a team is everybody become educated on what's in this NIST document, this S2DF document. Identify the areas that are specific to the pipeline, because this covers a whole gamut of areas, not just development. So what's specific to the pipeline, pull that into our doc, and then start listing the open source tools that can achieve the compliance of what this is asking for. Now, we don't need to repeat any of the data in here because we have links to it, and we can certainly link back if somebody wanted to look at the references for this, like, you know, OWASP or the NIST label that they put, or any of the ISO document that this came from. What we really want to do is provide an easy map for DevOps engineers to say, this is what's in this particular standard. Here are the areas that are specific to the pipeline. And if I don't have budget authority and I need to use open source tooling, what open source tools should I learn that could be put into the DevOps pipeline that can achieve this particular goal? And we'll stop it there. So if you could go back to our doc, Kate, and then go back to the website. I put the website in the chat.
I'm sorry about this, guys.
Okay. There you go. There you go. That's one. Okay. And then go to the CI/CD security guide on the upper right-hand corner on the menu. There you go. Okay. So where this will go is this, what we'll do is once we get a good start on the doc, we'll start bringing it into this. And now this is all done in markup, and it can integrate easily with Visual Studio. So anybody can then start working on any of the sections that they choose to, if we can come up with a good format. So I think that we should leave it there. Why don't you just click on phase 1 code and pre-build so we can see that particular section. Okay, so this is the section that Kate and I decided to start working on, but we haven't incorporated the changes in the Google Doc against the actual markdown. I just wanted to show you that this page is out here, and we need to do work in updating that page. So if you could go back to the shared Google Doc, Kate, and let's have a discussion on if this is a good format for moving forward and making it easy for everybody to work in an independent way if they choose to work on any of these sections and bring it forward to this Google Doc. And then once we get it going, we'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and create a pull request with a shortened version of it that everybody then can start working from. We just want to try to get a format for presenting the data. So that's really what we need to discuss today. Is this a good way to show the data?
And Eduardo, you have a question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to say that we actually, or me and Fernando is not here today, but we actually started with a pull request already for some content on the second phase, the build and deploy phase. Yeah, you can check it in the
apologize. I
GitHub.
Yeah, let me go. I have not looked at GitHub this since like Wednesday or Thursday of last week. I was checking it every day as we had new people signing up.
Mhm.
Let me go.
Yeah, yeah. This is to say that we will likely focus on that to help out with the content here, because we've actually built a project around this very similar on listing tools to help in this case, for example, attestation, signing, and doing both software and hardware attestation of CI/CD pipelines. And yeah, I just submitted a pull request already with some content there. But
And
yeah, we can
I
also.
just approved it, so it should go through.
Okay.
And that's the other
But
thing, we probably need to add different reviewers, so it's not just me doing reviewing the pull request. So that's probably another discussion that we should have, how we want to manage that.
yeah,
But overall then, if you've done this before, in terms of how we're looking at formatting the data based on the associated standard, do you think that's a useful way to do it, or is there a better way to display the information?
yeah, that's how we also did it. So we had this project that maybe at some point we can discuss how to include it, which is called Trust Ops, which is let's say a new set of methodologies for this new wave of securing supply chains, specifically on cryptographic attestation. So, for example, starting from signing the code to enabling the verification of the digital signatures in the build stage. Now, GitHub also has a compliant feature called GitHub attestations that basically creates also cryptographic attestations of builds done in their servers. And this, we also, in the beginning, we started by mapping this to some standards as well. So that was the process. We first understood what were the requirements for some of those standards, and then we tried to model the life cycle of cryptographic evidence and then leveraging the open source tools to actually help show to people that they can do this with open source. Yeah, so I guess this is more or less the process. Yeah.
Yeah, super. I think that's the stuff that you've already worked on. If you can bring it over into this format of this document, that would be a great.
Yeah, we can port it to that document. But yeah, I didn't know. So that's why we submitted a pull request in the beginning, before this meeting. So we already went a bit further. But we can bring the content here as well.
I think that your pull request probably should have been accepted and pushed through. Not yet. I did merge it, so we should see it shortly.
Yeah. Yeah, in a few seconds, then refreshing the page should probably show it.
Yeah. So I'm going to take that as a +1 for this kind of building it out in this by identifying the particular standard that we're referring, and then which
Yeah,
section it falls into.
Yeah, if you refresh the page, it should be there already. Yeah. So we have a lot of those tools and also some of the standards that they followed. And yeah.
Yep. Cool. I think
And those yeah, open
So I
source
think what
libraries.
I think what we'll have to do, and these are all open source tools that you've listed, because we don't want to put any commercial tools at this point in here.
Yeah, most of them are, except this trusted execution environments, which is anyways hardware environments from cloud providers. But for example, similarly, we have the GitHub attestations. This is something that has still been built. People can already use it, of course, under cloud environments, but they will start to be more available also for consumer stuff. But all the rest is open source libraries, yes.
So do we think that we could possibly then map this stuff back then to the SDDF?
Yeah.
That's I think how we should present it. So where it fits into where these, even if the tools are duplicated, that's totally fine. Because
Yeah.
remember, this isn't a document that somebody's going to sit and read the whole thing. It needs to be more of a reference guide. So if one tool satisfies multiple requirements, then we should have it listed in both of those areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
Tracy, what I
I
was gonna
want,
say, I think it's more work, but I think it's gonna be necessary. I think we need to map both ways. So one is, okay, I have a checklist of requirements I have to meet. Here are the tools that are gonna make it happen. The other direction is gonna be, here's the sequence of steps that we all have in our pipelines, and here are the tools in those steps, and this is why. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are the
yeah, I
requirements
think
we're gonna meet.
that's a great idea, so that you know if you're using a particular tool, what requirements that you're meeting in that area. I think that will be a very good way to cross-reference it.
Yeah.
So it was fairly easily then for you, Eduardo, to update it, right? You didn't have
Yeah,
to.
I just have to say that it was missing the local development yeah, stuff like Docker file and all that. Yeah, I didn't manage to actually build it locally. So what I did was just to edit the markdown file.
Yeah,
So
you
if
should
you
be
have,
able to set up here. Let me go through that. Should we take some time so I could show everybody how to set that up?
I think
yeah,
that'd
that
be,
would be nice. I tried myself, but then it was just taking so much time doing the Hugo stuff. So I just went straight to the markdown.
Right, but you weren't able to run it before. So this is the first time you've seen it, your markdown, right?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So everybody should be able to have a local environment without doing too much work. So let me, if everybody's okay with this format, and I'm gonna have to go back and catch Anne-Marie's comments, because I think cross-referencing is a really great idea. Is there any other discussion around how we're showing this data?
Hey Tracy,
Hi, Ed.
I'm new. Myself and Minye are here from Fidelity. We're looking forward to contributing and putting in our 2 cents to help here. So my understanding is, and sorry for the basic questions, and tell me to, quieten down, and you can catch me up later if needs be. My understanding is the goal here is to build out a tools catalog. So that developers can, if they want to comply with SSDF or build out a pipeline, they can come here and see the list of tools that they can use. But this list of tools is only open source, true?
Right, yes, we really don't want to create a commercial tools vendor
Okay.
list. We really want right now for it to be open source tools that are coming out of Apache, the CNCF, the CDF, or OpenSSF, or any of these
Got
open
it.
source communities.
Got it. Now, did some of the tools that are listed on the other page, like Veracode, there's some there that are commercial tools already.
Yeah, we'll probably need to
come up.
take those out if they're
Okay.
commercial, or if we want to start a a kind of a commercial tools page, we could certainly do that. But I would rather, and I would rather wait and say, okay, if we're going to do that, then we need to get those commercial tools to sponsor us
Right.
to do
Yeah.
that.
So that's where,
Because,
so I think
yeah.
what you're saying there is not for here and now. Priority is the open source, and maybe we look at the vendor tools later. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, I believe if this becomes, if we can work on this, let's say we put some decent time on it into it in the next 6 months. And 6 months, we do a release of this catalog, because we have it's only our eyes that are seeing it at this point. And we find that people are using it, then we do have a resource and a way to generate some extra funding for the CD Foundation, which, by the way, desperately needs it. They desperately need that funding. CD Events hasn't gotten any funding. This is another area that really needs help. But I believe that if this works, then we would look for basically sponsors, and we'd have a sponsor section that mimicked the open source section but showed the tools, or we would add the tool to the section and pointed out that it's commercial and where you
Mhm.
can get more
Okay.
information about it as a sponsorship. So I feel like
Okay.
if we're gonna do that, we should talk about that in the future as a sponsored listing.
Got it. Okay. Okay. And then if you're asking, I think the question was something along the lines of, is this a good way to lay it out, mapping it back to SSDF and maybe kind of pipeline diagram, something to consider. And again, I'm new, so it could be way off. But something to consider would be mapping it out in a kind of table format where you have the SSDF requirement, and maybe within each requirement there might be a sub capability, like the tool is SSDF requires the tool to implement this capability and that capability. Maybe a table of that with the first column on the left being the capabilities required. And then the column spread out across the top would be the individual tools, and you could have like a green, red, yellow for whether the open source tool meets that requirement capability or not. And then for each tick or green box, ideally, if I was a DevOps engineer, I'd like to be able to click and be brought not only to the page like OpenSSL, there's so many things you can do with OpenSSL, it's pretty broad. Ideally, to be like a page that we can point them to say, if you want to implement this capability with this tool, here's the specific 5 steps you need to do, like maybe a reference implementation or a working example, so that it's
I think
perfect.
when I was looking at the doc, if I hadn't gotten distracted and had a ton of other things I had to get finished this week, I was thinking of trying to build a table that looked like that.
Okay.
Would you
Okay.
mind,
Yeah.
would you mind going into sometime over the week, the next 2 weeks, going into that Google Doc and maybe building out the high level, the columns? And
Yeah.
maybe add a row so people have an idea of how that table would look. Because I
Yeah,
think
I
to Anne
can.
Marie's comment, we could then take that table and resort it, basically, resort it based on the open source tool and what it satisfies.
Yes, I can. What say you on, maybe not immediately, but prior to publish, that we reach out to the maintainers of these open source libraries and ask them for input, or you know, to A, inform them that we're doing this, and maybe but B, ask them for input, and maybe they produce content on, okay, if you want to meet this capability with our tool, here's exactly how you do it. And by the way, here's the roadmap, for the next 6 to 12 months for additional capabilities. So as folks are deciding, there's another thing, sorry, to cut it. As folks are deciding, they can factor that into their decision. But the other thing maybe we want to think about, and again, I could be way off, is maybe I'm assuming that we don't recommend, I'll ask, is this group recommending different open source options, or is it merely cataloging the tools to let
It's merely cataloging the tools.
Okay.
They need to make their own decision for their environments, right? And there may be
Yeah.
something that we could add to the table that says what environments it works for, right? Python is going to be different than Java, for example. So, so that may be part of the table that we have to include.
What I was thinking was, again, could be way off, not that we'd be recommending a tool, but would be given some guidance or some principles to factor into their decision-making logic. So for example, if I'm a DevOps engineer and I'm going to my boss to say, look, I've selected this tool, and the boss comes along and asks, why did you select it? Look, I'm after looking, and there's only one maintainer and it hasn't been touched in 5 years. So shame on you, DevOps engineer. Versus, look at boss, I've looked at 5 of them. There's 10 criteria that I factored into my decision, and here are the top 2 or 3, and here's why I went with this one. So maybe we could produce some guidance on DevOps engineers when you're choosing. Here are a few things you want to consider. we'd suggest you consider? Like,
I would say that what we would want to do, and I thought about that as well, is as we progress in this, one of the columns in the table would be the Open SSF scorecard.
okay,
Because that's going to answer those questions. You know, the Open SSF scorecard goes through like 10 or 12 checks to say, this is how compliant this open source package is.
yeah,
So if we could borrow on something like that, there's another one too, and I can't remember the name of it, that's trying to score open source tools and packages. But for the most part, we're not going to be looking at packages. We're going to be looking at the tools themselves. So they should have, especially if they're coming from the Open SSF, they should have a scorecard, right? If they're coming from the Linux Foundation at all, they should have a scorecard value. And if they don't, that would make me make me a little concerned about bringing them in. So I think that if we use some kind of a standard that's already been defined, that we should include it.
love it. For
But the
whatever it's
thing
worth.
about OpenSF scorecard, and because Ortelius, our evidence store, brings that information in, it does change. It is dynamic because some of those requirements for OpenSSF scorecard are hard to achieve. And it takes a while to get your score higher. So we might have to figure out a way to go out and look at the repo to bring that value in.
And the one metric that so Ed, when you were talking about colors,
Yes,
green,
ma'am.
red, I wonder if they could be representative of, let's say if something is green, it covers X amount of capabilities. So like this one tool would cover, I don't know, 5 capabilities. And that, and scoring with the Open SSF, like bringing those 2 scores together, if that would maybe list it more as a green.
Potentially, potentially, yeah. I was more thinking, if we were very, very specific about what the capability was, from what you were saying earlier, one tool could do multiple capabilities. So the table would be like maybe categories of SDF requirements with sub capabilities, and then the tools you'd be able to scan your eye down over the list of rows, and it'd be red, green, yellow, or red, green. Yes, it does meet. No, it doesn't meet. Or maybe it's like fully meets, partially meets, doesn't meet at all. And then you could see, okay, well, this particular open source tool meets 10 of what I need, or but it doesn't meet a criteria that it's a has to have for me. I'm sorry, that's a very indirect, that's a non-answer to your question, but
no, but I just right, because one of the problems that I believe developers have, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's just so many tools. And so then if you're learning, you know, have to learn, I don't know, a dozen tools to do your job, is there something easier? You know, is there one tool and maybe it only meets a little bit of this capability, but it's enough to you know, add a check on that box.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, having done this a few times, what you're usually tasked with is you actually are starting from the list of like security requirements, right? Like this list from NIST. And then what I always hear developers say is just give me a cheat sheet. Just tell me what tool will solve this problem for me. So clearly we need that direction. But then, yeah, when you're looking at a tool, then you pivot and you say, okay, how many requirements does this check off? And when and where do I run it? Yeah.
yeah, what's the level of effort for me to run as well? Like, if I'm to bring it into my environment, do I need, you know, a team of 2 people for a month to stand it up? And what about maintenance? Do I need one body for another, you know, an ongoing basis to maintain this thing or not? And I don't even know how we'd gather that information, but maybe a starting point would be talking to the maintainers themselves, or maybe companies. We could maybe the maintainers would give us contacts for companies that potentially we could interview or survey and get some kind of a score. Potentially, there's many opportunities or possibilities abound there, but they all would require work and time and effort.
Well, I think we'll get there over time. One baby step at a time is all we need. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you break it down into its tiny little pieces. So I think right now is getting this this Google page, and I just want to do it on the Google page at first. Really, let's come up with a format that all the other two sections can follow. And we're feeling pretty good about how we are able to share the information and update the table with the correct tool and the correct information. So I think that is the next step, is that we really understand how to update the data. And if we all do it in our own way, I think it'll look too inconsistent. So what I'm trying to do is come up with a format for this first phase that we can then let loose everybody to do, whoever wants to work on the other phases.
Yeah.
And I think that we've got pretty much, I think everybody's in agreement that doing it based on these different already standards, because we don't want to be the standards people. We want to be the DevOps tooling people. So if we break it down by the standard, then we'll have probably at least 3 or 4 common standards that already have been kind of accepted globally as the standards that we should follow. That's why I'm referring to, we should put SALSA in there. I have to look back at my original doc to see the standards we were talking about, but I know that the SDF is probably the most popular that people are talking about now. So I feel like if we started just with that and we got that down, then doing the rest of it will be much easier. All right, so what I'm going to do really quickly here is I'm going to take control. If you could let me share my screen. I'm going to get my environment set up first because it's. Let me get Visual Studio up. All right. Okay. All right, I've got a ton of stuff that I've been working on, and let me close some of this. You guys are like probably gonna like, she's crazy. I have so many things going on at once. Let me kill that too. All right, so what you're looking at is Visual Studio. And Visual Studio is free, so you can download it from Microsoft. For what you need to do for updating Markdown files is super easy to use. If I go, I'm looking at a different website, but I'm going to go open oops, I don't want to open it. I'm going to open up a folder. This is going to be important. I'm going to open up a folder. And if you see out on my, this is my local C drive. I don't know, if you're using Windows, it's going to be a little, or a Mac, it's going to look a little different. But I have a Git repo, which I do all of my work under. Here's my Meister stuff. Here's my OpenSSF stuff. Here's my CDF stuff. And under that, I have a, where is it? Oh, it's under CDF. I have a CI/CD cybersecurity folder. Now, the way I got that was I forked the repo. So I basically went into Git and I forked the CI/CD cybersecurity repo. Under here, you should already have a Hugo server installed as part of this. If I go into content and English, since we only have one, here's the CI/CD security guide, and that's what everybody's going to be working on. I can select that folder, and it's going to bring up those documents, and they're all listed as an index. So here is our intro. Here is some of the work that we had already done. I have not synced my repo with the changes that Eduardo made. So you won't see his here, but when I go back in, I would just go ahead and I would sync that information. So I'm going to go out here right now and I should sync it. the reason why I show you this is because these are this is primarily the 3 documents that we have. We may create additional phases, but it's probably going to be a big document. We can put additional documents underneath here as we need to, but right now, let's just keep it simple. And we have these 3 indexes that we're working from, 1 for each group. Now, if I go over here and go over to the command line, we're going to see it from the other side. Okay. Here's that directory I was just showing you. You notice there is a Hugo server installed here. So once you fork this, and once you you bring this down, you'll have to go install Visual Studio, but you should be able to bring this down. And I don't think there's anything else. You will have to install your Hugo server. So you'll have to go to Hugo and install the Hugo server. Then you will have to go and you'll have to bring down Visual Studio. Once you do that, though, you should be able to just run the Hugo server. But you do have to install Hugo locally. And then once you've got that going, you should be able to go out to your local host. And that will bring up the page. So this is my local version of the page. So the tools that you need are going to be Visual Studio. And I think that I tried documenting most of this. I thought I did.
I think it's in Join Our Team, yeah. Down.
Yeah.
Somewhere down. Yeah.
Yeah, so here's the sites for Hugo. I don't think I did anything to say how to start Visual Studio.
Yeah, but
But
so the Docker is not available, yeah? This Docker file you mentioned.
It may not be.
Mm-hmm.
This I probably need to update because I may have changed this because it got hard. So if anybody wants to take changing this documentation on, you can do that as well. So if you go to Visual Studio and if we open the file, open the folder one directory higher and did it here, we'd have everything. So if I select that folder, here is the resources page. Was it in resources? No, it was in community. Here is that information. And you can update that and create a pull request in the same way. This might be a little more complicated looking in terms of its markdown. If you've never used markdown, it might look a little scary, but it isn't terribly bad. So this is the section that I need to update, and I'll try to remember to do that.
But actually, it would be nice to keep Docker build in there. Maybe I can work on creating a Docker file just to build Hugo.
That would
to
be
build
great.
the website. Yeah, I will try to work on that next week. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Because that helps some people, yeah, to develop locally. They may not want to install Hugo in their host system, so they can use Docker.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So if we had that Docker file that we could run, that would be would be good. I borrowed this whole website. I borrowed from the CDF best practices. So they probably had a Docker, and I didn't catch this. So Eduardo, thank you for pointing that out. If we could add
I will
that
work
would
on
be
that.
super. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because the goal is so that all of you have a local environment that it's easy for you to work on. If you want to put in an hour a week to do a section of one of the areas, and even if you don't know all the open source tools that would go into it, as Ed pointed out, if we can get these sections in there, and then we can start reaching out to the open source community, we're building these tools to start adding themselves, that would be super helpful. But I think we've got to get the framework for them first, otherwise it will become a bit crazy looking. So I know I went through that fast, but we don't have a lot of time to sit and look at how to set this stuff up. I would say the one thing that, you know, downloading, if you, since we don't have this yet, you'll have just downloading the Hugo server and downloading Visual Studio would be the 2 steps I would take. And then being sure that you can get to Git and fork that repo that I was working in. This the CDF repo, specifically this one. So here's the best practices site that I used. And and this is, I checked that in under our CICD cybersecurity group. And that's how that got forked.
So how soon can we jump from Google Doc to Markdown, do you think?
I think by our next call, if, you know, Ed can give us a format for a table that's at least one direction, that we should be able to take that and check that into the Google Doc into Markdown. I can take that Google Doc and turn it into a Markdown and get it checked in for everybody. I just want to get the look of it correct first. Because it's harder to manage it in Markdown to play with it. If we can get a format for it in the Google Doc, then I'll create the Markdown version of it and we'll be good to go.
Just in terms of timelines, I think 2 weeks is reasonable. There's a couple
You
of
don't have to
logistics.
do much. Just give us the high level. Just give us the columns and maybe, you know, one row just to show an example. And don't do any more than that because then I have to go build it in Markdown. So if I can get the columns in one row, I'd be good.
Cool. Yeah, okay, we'll do. And just I might touch base with you offline. There's a few logistics we'll probably have to work through, like Fidelity has pretty mature open source program office that, so we're encouraging all our developers to contribute to open source. We're big fans of the open source community. So I'll work with them and to streamline the process to contributions that we make, myself and Mindy.
Great.
I might pull you into one or conversation with those folks, Tracy, just to set the stage. But
no problem. Just reach out to me or Kate and we'll be happy. Eduardo, you got your hand up?
Yeah, maybe Tracy, you want to add more people to the repository contributors or the ones that can approve pull requests, so we can make it faster.
Yes, we need to.
I can be one.
Yeah, I'll volunteer also.
Okay. Then I'll add the 2 of you as reviewers. And let me see how I can set it up to at least have 2 reviews for a pull request. Right now, we don't have to worry too much about it, but I'll get that done in the next 2 weeks because as soon as Ed gets us finishes the table that he described, I think we'll be able to run with it pretty quickly. Because I think it'll give a structure for people to be able to contribute. They'll go, oh, I can add a row, right? That's how easy I want to make it for people to contribute. And then we will need to get reviewers to make sure that we're not adding any kind of commercial tooling or advertising in it. Because we need to keep it as clean as possible.
I would like to volunteer to be reviewed too, if that's okay.
Yeah, and who is this?
Chris Dunn.
Chris, okay. All right. So I got Anne, Chris, and Eduardo, and Kate. Okay, will do. And since we're trying to be strict on time, I really would like to get this down to 30 minutes because I know everybody's busy. And we've gone 45. Is there anything else that we think we should cover today? And we know what our honeydews are, so I think we can get some stuff done in the next 2 weeks.
Hey, Tracy.
Yes.
It's Jude.
Hi, Jude.
Hi, everybody. Just wanted to give you a quick update. I've been trying to connect with Jim Schild with the North American DevOps group. They have their their networking event on the 26th. And I've been trying to get on as a, just to do a plug for our meetup group to see if we can get more people involved and possibly participate with NADOG as a kind of a pre-meetup before their event. And their event is typically geared towards the enterprise tech community. So if we had a combination of open source folks that are coming to our event and then moving over to something that's a little bit more enterprise, it would be nice to be able to kind of share what's going on between both sides, right? I haven't heard back from Jim. I'm hoping to hear from him just to see if we can get in. And I know, Kate, maybe you were thinking about putting a little bit of a deck together, possibly for some of these meetups, if that's still happening, even if it's just one slide. That's really all I'm hoping to kind of get in terms of airtime at NADOG. I did sign up. I just haven't heard from him. The other opportunity is to possibly reach out to CloudBees and see if they would be willing to host one of our meetups at their downtown San Jose office. They just got back from SCO, so I'm trying to hear back from some of the field marketing folks to see where their interest is on that. So that's the latest. And I still need to kind of work on getting, some kind of registration page, some kind of landing page on the website. I also noticed that the Jenkins advocacy group did list our SIG in their meeting agenda that they had. So that's good. It's great to see that the Jenkins group is promoting what we're doing. So I'm happy to see that. That's the latest.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
And Jude, I'll send you an email after this call.
Okay.
Maybe we can
Okay.
connect
Thank you.
tomorrow.
That's great. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you all. Again, for this, getting involved in this crazy idea I had at the end of last year. But I think if we do it right, it will be a very useful document for DevOps engineers who are not security professionals and they don't want to be. They just want to build, workflows, and if new tooling is needed, they're happy to put it in. I think that sometimes there's so many tools coming out though, especially in the open source right now, that it's hard to keep track. And if we can clarify that for them, we're providing a pretty serious service. And I think that the fact that the Jenkins community is starting to reference us is a clear indication that it's a service that's needed.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Looking forward to Ed's table.
See you.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
All right.